Good morning, everyone. Welcome to October 6, 2021 Executive Committee meeting. We acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and part of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. To ensure social distancing measures are being met during this time, some members of the city administrations are attending the meeting today through video conferencing. I would like to remind those who are attending through video conferencing of the following. Please ensure that your video camera and microphones are turned off. If a member of council wishes to speak, use the raised hand function to be placed into the speaking queue. When speaking, remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera, and all votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Okay, can I have someone move motion to approve agenda? Call of the chair, adding item EX 21-66. Councillor Stanichuk. Call question. All those opposed? That is carried. Can I have someone move motion to approve the meeting minutes from Executive Committee held September 22nd? Councillor Hawkins. Any errors or omissions? Yeah, I'll call the question. All those opposed? So now that is carried. Thank you. We'll move into the administration reports. We will now consider EX 21-63, Utility Affordability Report. Mr. Lacey, I think I'll turn it over to you. Give you the microphone. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning through you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few brief remarks, and I'm going to turn it over to the team that we have with us here today to make a short presentation. So the report before you is in response to a request from City Council meeting of June 24th from last year. And then there's also been some subsequent discussions and referrals that have been made since then that we've incorporated into this report. So Council requested a report by Q3 of this year discussing options to reduce the cost of water and wastewater for low-income residents, and a political advocacy strategy aimed at the federal and provincial governments to reduce water and wastewater costs for low-income residents. In crafting the options, Council requested that administration consider the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And in early 2021, Council also requested that administration consider sustainability and discussing utility affordability options, and that this report also include analysis on the impact of shifting the access fee currently charged to the utility to the tax base. And so the report covers that variety of topics. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Bryden and Ms. Mills, who will walk us through a short presentation on the work that is included in this report. Ms. Bryden.
Thank you, Barry. So good morning. Once again, we're here with a bunch of information for you guys. And so with me is Tanya Mills, and we also have Aaron Hertis and John Diffendorum on the line for us. So we have a lot of information, again, contained in this report. It's broke down with some appendices and some jurisdictional scans and engagement information. And so our presentation today is really just, again, another highlight of the key findings from each of these appendices. So Tanya's going to start us off this morning talking about water affordability.
Good morning. So what is water affordability? Similar to the process we used with the property tax affordability we discussed previously, the first step we took in looking at the affordability program for the utility was defining what water affordability means. Affordability is not a universally defined term, and this adds complexity in engagement and analysis and presents a challenge in presenting clear-cut case on which actions should be taken. In defining affordability for the context of this report, administration conducted a review of how water affordability is defined by water agencies and governing bodies reviewed the targets for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6, consulted with colleagues developing strategies and frameworks also touching on affordability, as well as counterparts at the University of Regina studying affordability issues. What we found was that international consensus suggests that water is affordable if households are spending no more than between 2 and 5% of their income on water, and that best practice is to define affordability at a local level to consider unique circumstances of each community. Given the higher costs associated with providing water services in Regina due to the need to transport water from the Buffalo Pound water treatment plant, the 5% threshold was used for this analysis. The details of the water affordability analysis and program evaluation can be found in Appendix A of your report. Using the 5% affordability threshold, we did identify that approximately 7,745 households, or 8.2% of households, have experienced water unaffordability in Regina. Again, these estimates are based on 2016 census data, as that's the most recent data available. This graph presents the distribution of households that experience unaffordability by household size. A greater number of smaller households have experienced water unaffordability, which can be due to their tendency to have lower household incomes and high fixed costs. This makes reduction in consumption less effective in lowering costs. Larger households experience water unaffordability less because they tend to have higher household incomes due to combined income, and they benefit from increased water consumption efficiency. What this means is, an example is watering your lawn takes the same amount of water regardless of how many people live in the household. Also, based on low income cutoff, most of the households that have experienced water affordability in Regina are low income households. To learn about affordability programs and understand how other Canadian municipalities provide assistance, administration conducted a jurisdictional scan of 19 municipalities and 28 private utility providers across Canada. Of those, we found that 12 municipalities and 13 private utility providers do have a utility affordability program in place. This slide provides a description of the affordability programs most commonly used. They are rebates, one-time assistance payments, service fee waivers, and high-efficiency retrofit programs. Administration conducted engagement through Be Heard Regina from May 28th to June 30th. This online questionnaire was designed to provide Regina residents with a public engagement opportunity to share opinions with the city. It was not a statistically valid survey conducted with a random selection of respondents. The purpose of the engagement was to gauge the overall level of support for affordability programs and ask the public three main things in relation to the water utility. Should we have an affordability program? If we did have a program, who should it support and what should it look like? And finally, if there were a program, how should it be funded? Of the total 2,924 survey respondents, 70% expressed some level of support for tax and utility affordability programs. 61% supported utility program eligibility for all low-income households, and 28% supported program eligibility for specific groups. Within that, there was strong support for affordability programs tailored at seniors at 42%, followed by support for households that include those living with a disability at 34%. In terms of affordability program types, support was strongest for rebates at 63%, followed by one-time assistance payments. We did also receive additional comments from citizens regarding affordability programs that were submitted via service request, email, and mail. Of the 38 written feedback received, 30% expressed support, while 38% expressed opposition, and the remaining 32% were neither supportive or unsupportive, but had comments on program design. In terms of funding options, 41% of respondents in the survey showed support for funding through general revenue, such as property tax, and another 20% showed they preferred funding through an increase in the water utility rates. Again, this slide is just a snapshot of the results. The full engagement results are attached as Appendix E, with the additional feedback in Appendix F of the report. So given all of that information, administration evaluated 4 program options using the criteria of affordability, conservation, equity, community support through the engagement survey, and administrative cost. This slide depicts a summary of the evaluation. Boxes marked in green indicate improvement from the current state. Those marked in yellow show little or no improvement. Boxes in orangey red indicate deterioration from the current state, and gray shows where no results are shown. And then the hash marks indicate where there's complexity or mixed impact. Based on the evaluation, rebates and high efficiency retrofits were most likely to improve affordability and align with conservation and efficiency objectives. However, these options also require more resources.
Thanks, Tanya. So in addition to affordability options, we were asked to talk about what the impacts of shifting the access fee to the tax base would be. So what is the access fee? So the access fee is a fee paid from the utility to the city operations. And it is meant to be a payment in lieu of property taxes or other fees that the utility would use. Currently, the fee is equal to 7.5% of previous year's budgeted utility revenues from water services and a proportionate share of goods and services tax rebate. So the 2021 access fee is budgeted at 11.1 million. Transferring the access fee will reduce the utility base charge by approximately 24.4%. And also increase the mill rate by 4.1% so that we can keep the city's revenues whole. The table on the right shows the impact of the changes to the utility and the tax bills for sample properties. In general, shifting the access fee would result in small decreases for lower value properties and significant increases for higher value properties. The transferring of the access fee to the operations would be a departure from full cost recovery funding approach using user fees for the water utility and the OCP's benefits model, which is based on the notion that services that benefit specific individuals, such as water services, should be funded by user fees. More details on this analysis is included on Appendix B of the report. As mentioned previously, Council has specifically asked administration to provide to consider the UN Sustainability Development Goals while crafting affordability program options. These goals and targets don't specifically provide details for crafting affordability policies. Rather, they serve as a high-level guide for strategic policy planning. Appendix C contains a full discussion on which existing goals in the OCP and water and wastewater master plans align with the targets, and specifically Target 6, which is ensuring access to water and sanitation for all. Affordability programs offer solutions at improving water affordability among low-income households. There are other strategic considerations and impacts with the implementation of any affordability program. Goals within the OCP, the Water Master Plan, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals support the use of affordability programs to enhance quality of life for those in disadvantaged positions. There are also several other intersection initiatives ongoing within the city. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, where the city is developing a comprehensive plan to address poverty, inequality, mental illness, substance abuse, and homelessness. The high-level holistic approach taken by this initiative makes it well-suited for examining the interaction between water and tax affordability policies and their interaction with the broader well-being policy. Advanced Meter Infrastructure Project is also ongoing. This project aims to replace the city's 76,000 water meters over 5 years. This will improve the efficiency and sustainability of water utility by allowing for real-time collection of water consumption data for advanced analytics and improved water infrastructure maintenance. The energy and sustainability framework is in development and will be a strategy leading us to become a 100% renewable city with net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The water system is a significant contributor to the city's greenhouse gas emissions and plays a key role in achieving sustainability. This initiative is well suited to evaluating the role of water policies in the broader sustainability context. Also, a review of water rates is planned after the AMI project is complete, which will enable water demand modeling and allow the city to evaluate alternative water rate structures that may help improve affordability. We were also asked to talk about create a political advocacy strategy. Affordability is not only dependent on the cost of water services and household incomes, but also on the cost of other essential goods and services. The city has limited capacity to influence these factors, but can ask federal and provincial governments, either directly or through SUMA or FCM, to improve water affordability. Since the request for an advocacy strategy was made, administration has begun work on Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, which will recommend a collective approach to addressing root issues of crime, such as poverty and inequality, as well as services for those struggling with mental illness, substance use challenges, and homelessness. The strategy will include recommendations and an implementation plan to address the key priorities that have emerged through community consultation and data collection. As the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan will include recommendations that will need cross-sector collaboration and support from other levels of government, and many of the underlying social issues addressed in the plan are relevant to low-income households that could experience water affordability challenges, it is recommended that we undertake advocacy on these issues as part of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and not a separate piece of work for water affordability. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to any questions, can I get someone to move the report? Thank you very much. Councillor Stevens, you want to go ahead?
Great, thank you. I very much appreciate the report, as well as the report that you conducted on tax affordability. I think it settles a lot of questions that we've had, so it's much appreciated. I'm going to move option 1, which is provide direction to administration to develop a water rebate program and a high efficiency retrofit program for all low-income customers for Council's consideration by Q2 of 2022. I can wait for that to pop up, or committee can just look at the report. Your call, John.
Okay. So we'll give the committee a chance to weigh in on the conversation.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we wanted to put up there.
Yeah.
So this had come up a year ago at council, and part of it was a response to a number of debates that we've had around water affordability. So on the one hand, we have just the reality of how much water and sewer costs, from the treatment to the pipes, the distance from the facility. So we're accepting that as fairly static. Those costs will increase, but it's something we can't really adjust that conveniently. And I would argue that this is probably one of the most regressive forms of, I'll call it a taxation system. It's still a cost for service and utility. But ultimately, it's, as administration has pointed out, water becomes less affordable based on where you're at in the income spectrum. So lower income people are more negatively affected by our utility rate than they would be by property taxes. And really every time at council we'll hear the same discussion around how we have to ensure water is affordable, same with taxes. So I put this motion together because then maybe we could do something about it rather than just talking about it, recognizing we still have to invest in our infrastructure. This is a response, so we can kind of stop going around in circles and actually put our money where our mouth is in terms of making a difference for those most affected in our city. One of the complaints that I would hear, and I think issues we've talked about at council, is, well, these individuals would likely get some form of income assistance. That might be true, but to put in perspective, you could be making $40,000 or $50,000 in a household per year and still be low income, depending on the size of your family. So you make well above and might not actually be eligible for forms of income assistance and still be low income. And I think the report does a really good job of highlighting that and talking about how widespread it is. We also know in Regina, like across Saskatchewan, low-income families that are families that are single parent families are more likely to be low income. It's not just seniors. We often create this story of almost exclusively seniors, but it's not. We have some of the highest low income and poverty rates in the country. There couldn't be a better place in Canada, I would argue, to establish such a program as we would see here in Regina or even Saskatoon or Prince Albert. But I think this province could actually set a standard for how we handle this. I think the other benefit of this option is it also talks about retrofit and sustainability. So there's 2 points here. Working with residents to reduce their consumption, as well as addressing the affordability question. I think there are other options in here. I would argue that this is probably the best. There is an option for seniors. Perhaps we would see a focus on folks with disabilities, but I would argue a broad-based strategy and program is the most effective at dealing with a number of priorities that we've already addressed. So we actually have strategies that identify this as a concern and as a priority, and I think we need to advance it for that reason. Another concern that I would hear would actually from landlords who own properties in parts of the city that are typically associated with low-income households, who in many cases end up shouldering those costs if tenants have moved, they can't track them down. So often this cost of water then gets shouldered by landlords. It might actually be a benefit to them if this program would apply to their own tenants. Whether or not that would be eligible in this program is another question, but still, I think there's actually a broad-based support that we could see for residents in Regina if this goes ahead. And I also appreciate administration's recognition of the net zero commitment and our environmental commitments that we've made, as well as community well-being. So I think this aligns very well with other priorities that we've already established as a council. And I hope we see fit to actually support residents who are in dire need in our community and who see water as far less affordable than property taxes in our community. And I think it really is something that fits within our jurisdiction. So I hope we can see committee support for this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawkins, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the intent of Councillor Stevens' motion, and I suspect every councillor here does appreciate the intent. The question is whether water utility rates are an appropriate vehicle for the redistribution of income. You have to go back to remember what is the basis of our water utility rate. As the report points out, best practice for ensuring the safety and the viability, the sustainability of our water system, which is perhaps the most important system we administer on the public's behalf. Best practice for ensuring that sustainability is full cost recovery. We have full cost recovery now. We've followed it for a number of years, and we've seen it strengthen our water and our water delivery system. To convert that objective into an income redistribution vehicle is to undermine the sustainability of our water utility, and I think that would be a mistake. It's simply the case that the utility system is not designed to achieve the purpose which Councillor Stevens has so importantly outlined. Does that mean we're indifferent to the plight of people who are low income and are having trouble affording water? No, it doesn't. But what we've said as a city is we have specific programs, better targeted, better designed to deal with low-income residents. For example, the Housing First program that we're currently putting in place. For example, the community wellness issues which are coming when they receive the community wellness plan. Those specific programs are easier for us to administer, are less destructive of our utility system, and will achieve their objective. There is another difficulty. If we use the water utility rate system as an income distribution vehicle, where does this stop? Should we use the property tax system to achieve the same result? To give rebates for low-income households on their property tax? In some ways, that's a more direct approach and less destructive, but it is also undermines city finances. Which brings me to my final point. The government that needs to step up here, the level of government that can really achieve the results, the social assistance results that we achieve, the level of government that has the best, most direct jurisdiction to do that is the provincial government. And in my opinion, they're not doing an adequate job of that. I would cite the fact that Saskatchewan has the lowest guaranteed minimum wage in the country. I would cite the recent changes to the social assistance program, which has made it more difficult for people to afford their homes. They're the level of government that has to step up. If they can shirk their duties because we're going to adjust our utility rates, thereby undermining our utility rates, or if we're going to starve ourselves by adjusting our property tax rates, which are one source of income to do all the other priorities that we have to deal with, if they're going to do that, if they're going to download their social assistance responsibilities onto municipal levels of government, we have a problem because our resources are already tightly limited. So my submission to you would be that we not use utility rates as an income redistribution vehicle. It's too destructive of the utility's sustainability, but that we continue down the path that we're on of designing specific programs which we know how to administer and which are more clearly within our jurisdiction. If we use those programs to provide assistance, and as the report suggests, we continue to press the provincial government to treat fairly and humanely our low-income citizens. I'd urge Council to reject this motion, not because we don't care, but because this is an inappropriate vehicle for achieving the fine objectives which the motion seeks to achieve. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Rashani, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too agree with Councillor Hawkins. I think the question before us is what does it cost to own a home? And I think that's the true question. And what are the costs that come with that? And we know that accessing water is something that you have to pay for when you own a home. If you're renting an apartment, it's much less. So people have choices. And I think that it really muddies the waters for us when we start looking at pitting the low-income earners and trying to find programs for ownership. What's our goal here? And I think the question I ask is, I would hope as a city we are not just promoting to low-income earners that we need high-energy retrofits to have a sustainable city. I want that for every resident in this city. That's what we should be promoting. Every homeowner, every developer, you find those high-energy retrofits to benefit our city. Administration gave us a great report on the balance of all of those. A 4.1 mill rate increase to cover this. Again, I think it's in the report, it would be about a $2 to $3 million cost. What is that? Who pays for that? So we're going to add on a 4.1 mill rate increase to this. It defeats the purpose. We know the feedback when we go to, I think we had a 1.4 or 1.9 this past in the times we're in. So I think we are, again, when we look at the water utility, I don't think this is, as Councillor Hawkins indicated, we all have to pay to get the water here. It's unfortunate the Buffalo Pound is many kilometers away, but that is that's what we have to deal with. That's the true story. So everybody needs to pay for that to have the access here to get the water. And I absolutely agree. I don't think the water utility is something that we want to fuss with, because we know that how important that is, but we also know that we've got a plant that we have to pay for that's being built. The last piece that we also heard from administration is we also have other methods. We have the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, and we also know that there's a water rate review coming. And if I can suggest one thing, is that with this water rate review, is from previous years, it's been very sporadic. We've gone from 3% to 6% to 9%, then down to 4%. Maybe it's something we have to look at where it actually, and I think now, and I could ask administration that, when is that water rate review going to be coming back? And is the goal to kind of level it out, or do we do that now through the chair?
Thank you. Do we go to Lacey? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. There's probably through you, Mr. Chair, there's probably two pieces to touch on there. So with respect to setting the rate for the upcoming year and future years, the utility model operates on a 25-year model, and it really, looking out over 25 years, it takes into account what we think the upcoming annual operating costs will be, what the maintenance costs will be, and then there's a capital side to it as well with respect to both current and future planned capital expenditures to make sure that revenue stream is there to allow the water utility to be sustainable. So through that modeling, we bring forward to the budget process a discussion of rates and what we see future rates are going to be. So we'll have that discussion because we did have 3%, council might recall, for 3 years. We'd kind of set that to allow residents to have that longer term perspective of what to set. So we'll be coming back as part of the budget process and having a conversation about what do we see the rates being moving forward. And to the trying to smooth the rates or have a steady rates, I think we've worked hard, past councils have worked hard to get the utility into a pretty sustainable position. You had referenced rates of 7, 8, 9% if you go back 6 or 7 years. And that was really because we needed to do some catch up to get to a place where you've seen utility rates being pretty consistently 3% over the last 3 years. And I expect we'll have that discussion at budget, but I do expect we'll be looking at probably around 3% moving forward. Although I would flag, council did have a lead connection discussion, and so there will be an additional 2% next year just related to advancing our lead connection program. So one aspect is through the budget process, and I do expect, just because of our modeling, that our recommendation is likely going to be around 3% again next year, plus the lead service connection, but that'll be part of the budget discussions, and I think that's the appropriate forum to talk about that and what we see the long-term rate being. The second piece is this utility review, and so I think people use utility review to mean different things, so maybe I'll just be a little bit clear on that. We are also embarking on an AMI program, which is replacing the water meters. And with new technology and advances that have occurred over the last decade plus, we're going to get a lot better data with respect to what's going on, and we believe residents will have much better data and accessible data to them as well if they wish to access it. And so Ms. Bryden talked about when we have that technology in place and those water meters in place, it does open up potentially other opportunities for us to look at how we set rates, and that potentially, depending on how you do that, could affect water affordability. So I'm just going to use one example. With a system that has the features that allow you to do it, people that use high water usage in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the day, maybe you charge higher rates. And then that allows you to offset perhaps costs at other points of time during the day, or do other things that more broadly maybe have an affordability impact to it. And you see that with power companies as well, that they'll charge more, for example. That's decisions to be made down the road by council through recommendations from administration as we bring that into place. But when we talk about reviewing kind of the rates and how we calculate it, we're really kind of referring to using the opportunity to do that when we have better information and better tools to maybe do things differently than what we do today.
Thank you for that clarification. I heard from Ms. Bryden, I just want to be clear that shifting the access fee now is what Councillor Stevens is recommending here. It wouldn't be the access fee. So what would be the cost through the chair, through option one?
Ms. Lacey, is we're going to Ms. Bryden?
Sure. Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Bashani. So the shifting of the access fee, what Councillor Stevens is proposing doesn't have an impact on the access fee. And to do this program, there are a couple of different ways that it could be funded, and that's part of the work that we would bring back. I think in the report we outline, for example, if we chose to have a monthly water bill or a monthly fee on all the water bills. If the program cost $3 million, that would end up being just over $3 per month per water bill that program would cost. Or if you did it through a utility rate increase, it would, a $3 million program would be about a 2.25% mill rate or utility rate increase. So there's different ways that can be funded, and that's part of the work that we would bring back as part of the policy. Or program, sorry.
Okay. At the end of the day, it's accurate that we only have one taxpayer, and it would have to be funded through someone else paying for that if this goes through. Is that accurate?
Ms. Bryden?
Through the chair. So the program could be funded through the utility, which would then be funded by utility users and not specifically property tax payers.
But utility users, which would be all of the people paying utility.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Again, I'll just sum up my comments. I think that we have to be very, very careful. I think that this is just another one where I think it's part of owning a home, no different than recycle and garbage and water. And I think that the more that we, I guess I just have one last question. What is considered the salary for low income, and how is that determined by the city?
Ms. Bryden, go ahead.
Through the chair. So for the purposes of this report, we use the LICO after tax, which is the same measure that we talked about with the tax affordability report and the same measure that we use for transit and community services. And the specific amount, actually I'll refer that to Ms. Mills. She'll have that more specific amount.
Thank you, through the chair. For the 2019, the LICO cutoff for a single household was $18,520, and it is based on size of household. So for example, for a 4-person household, it was $35,000.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sure. So for the 2019 low-income cutoff for a single household was $18,520, and it is adjusted for household size. So it goes up to a 4-person household, which would be $35,000.
Okay. And I think the last point is that we also have other programs that we've put into the community safety and well-being, looking for affordability and looking at the poverty and the equities there as well. So I think that we have to analyze all of that, consider all of that before we move forward. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bashani. What we got here? Councilor Mancinelli, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to confirm about the size of the increase this would trigger. Regardless of this passing or not, it's already a 5% slated increase coming between the lead connection and the utility increase itself. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it's looking like we'll be recommending a regular 3% rate increase for the utility.
Yeah.
And then there's 2% as well that council's already approved related to the utility connection program. So for a total of 5% for 2022, I think is what we're looking at when we bring the budget forward without any consideration of this item.
Okay, so this item would trigger about another 1.5%. Is that correct?
So with respect to the rebate portion of what's in the motion before you, yes, pursuant to the report, we're estimating that would be between $2 and $3 million. And if it was done through a utility rate increase, that would be an additional 1.5% to 2.25% utility rate increase.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. When we talk about the retrofit options laid out, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm assuming a lot of these houses may be rental houses. How would that overlay between a rented house and a retrofit when you're looking at consumption and the cost of the commodity and all that? How would that be implemented and would be considered?
Mr. Lacey, to you or Ms. Bryden?
I will refer that question to Ms. Bryden and her team, who did some of the research around this in other jurisdictions.
Ms. Bryden, go ahead.
I'll refer that one to Ms. Mills, thanks.
Ms. Mills, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. The program would likely be available both to renters or property owners and tenants, and that we would design it after some of the other municipal programs, which would allow for whatever's the most benefit to the utility customer.
Thank you. I noticed in our discussions about industry that the amount of consumption we have as a city is a big deal. And when we look at the amount of houses that have been retrofitted for low consumption units, would this be a big part of excess consumption in our city, causing us to tap the utility too much or not have available resource for when we actually need to grow as well? Through the chair.
Ms. Lacey, that goes to you, or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll just confirm, I think the question really is with respect to some wastage because of low efficiency bathroom fixtures, etc.
Yeah. To
What
put it real
impact does
easy,
that have on our overall volumes? I don't know if Mr. Doney is online. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Doney if he wishes to comment on those type of issues where you have leaks, etc., occurring in with households and the impact that has on our utility volumes.
Okay, I will go. Mr. Doney, you
Sorry.
online, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we have seen over the last number of years is our liters per capita has actually stayed pretty consistent, and our city has grown, which showing that water conservation is actively being conducted by residents. However, there are locations, and particularly with older homes or homes that have not been upgraded, that would still have a high water usage. So any water rebate program would be beneficial for those homes to reduce that water usage.
Thanks for that. Another question about who would be eligible for this. I want to make sure I read those stats right. that $18,000 cutoff, is there really 4,500 households roughly in Regina that would be eligible, living under that $18,000 threshold? Did I read that stat correctly?
I'll refer
Lacey?
that question, Mr. Chair, to either Ms. Bryden or Ms. Mills.
Okay. Ms. Bryden, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so the cutoff is depending on household size. And, we don't necessarily understand the makeup of that household, but the information that we have would indicate that that is the correct number.
Thanks. Did I also infer there that this is very largely made up of single-person households? I believe was in the stat as well. Thanks.
Yes.
One last question. We approve this option. It doesn't mean we're tied into the spend. It means we get the information back on how this would be administered and what it would look like. Is that correct?
Through the
Ms. Bryden?
chair, yes, that would be correct.
Thank you.
Councilor LeBlanc, go ahead.
Thank you. I plan to support the motion. I just want to respond to a couple comments. So one point of clarification that administration brought up is that renters as well as homeowners could benefit from the rebate program. So I think that undermines a little bit what Councillor Bresciani said about the water fee being the cost of owning a home. I think for renters, then that's the cost of survival in Regina. So it's not a choice they willingly took on. It's what it costs to drink water. The second is in response to Councillor Hawkins' concern about if we pass this, it will move us from the full cost recovery method. I heard administration to say we could continue to fund this by utility fees, the full cost recovery. It's just about different users paying a different amount. This doesn't necessarily mean we're shifting to the tax base and a mill rate increase. So I think the option either way remains open to us. I suppose my final comment is to echo and piggyback a bit on Councillor Hawkins that the provincial government is missing in action on issues of social equity. That's absolutely true. I think the question is, given that they're missing in action, what, if anything, should the city do? I think this is part of it, so I'll support it. Thank you.
Councilor LeBlanc. Okay. Councilor Stanleychuk, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a number of questions just regarding what's coming forward in the past. So through the chair, there were some intersecting initiatives that were mentioned. Can someone, I can understand advanced metering and the water rate in terms of how it might impact some of the discussions about affordability. But how would, I'm not quite clear how the community safety and well-being could impact this. So is there, I'm kind of curious why that was included as a possible intersecting initiative through the chair.
Mr. Lacey, that's to you too. Where we're going.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll make a few comments and then I'll ask Ms. Bryden if she has anything to add. So the report really speaks to the community and well-being initiative as it ties to a advocacy kind of a program or action by the city. And so what we're indicating in the report is affordability is a much bigger topic than just water affordability. And so we think it makes more sense to have a comprehensive strategy on how you advocate and lobby and have discussions with the other levels of government with respect to affordability overall, as opposed to having piecemeal kind of advocacy and initiatives where perhaps your message gets lost. And we think the appropriate vehicle and form, or at least that's what we're recommending, is the community and well-being discussions and what that broader advocacy strategy looks like. And I think water affordability can be part of it, but should be a more comprehensive and thought-out strategy as opposed to one-off on particular issues.
Okay, thank you for that.
Ms. Bryden, anything to add?
No,
nothing to add.
Okay, through the chair, and there's also, this fall, we're also going to be getting the yard waste, I always forget what it's called, the yard waste implementation plan report. Is that also connected to our discussion about affordability and the utility? Is it connected at all? No?
For you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe it is. And
Okay. One thing that I heard a lot through from a number of residents is the overall, how our water utility rate has gone up over the last more than a decade now, I assume. And I'm really hoping that we could have some, in terms of any future reports that are coming forward, some more transparency in terms of what those rate increases have been and how they have been, why they were required and how they've been utilized. Is that something, through the chair, that we will be seeing in future reports in terms of this is what, because people will say, I remember 15 years ago I paid this for water and now I'm paying this. And so are we going to be able to provide more information to residents about why their costs have increased and how that has been utilized, through the chair?
Mr. Lacy?
so, through you, Mr. Chair, so a couple of comments. One, I don't think if you look across other jurisdictions, we're the only utility that has seen increasing rates. As I'd mentioned earlier, you go back 5+ years, our rate increases were in the 6, 7, 8, 9% range.
Yes.
And they've been pretty consistent at that 3% range now for a period of time. And if you look at other utilities, at least when we've looked at it the last couple of years when we brought the 3% forward, many other utilities have actually higher rate increases than the 3%. And I think it's in part they're just playing catch up as well with respect to infrastructure deficit and knowing what they have to do. And we had done that a little bit earlier. And previous councils had recognized that need, I think, earlier, and it put us on the footing that we're on now. With respect to what goes into that 3% utility rate increase, I appreciate the comments that are being provided, and I think that's something that we can take away with respect to how we shape and explain, why we're asking for a rate increase when that comes forward as part of the budget process. And, it really does go back to, 2 or 3 main elements that are in the budget book, but perhaps we can do a better job shaping it. So the first one is just basically the annual operating costs of operating the water utility, right? So that's the, payments to the wastewater treatment plant, the EPCOR contract we have, water purchases from Buffalo Pound, which is volume-based, and so those 2 components make up a lot of that annual budget. And then we have our own, salaries and benefits and other costs with respect to maintaining our infrastructure within the city from an annual operating perspective. The other component of it then is capital replacement of our aging infrastructure system. And so you see that in the 5-year capital plan of the utility. And so while the capital plan is primarily funded through the utility reserve is replenished through that a portion of that annual rate increase. And so the 5-year capital plan for utility, as an example, has a long list of projects that will be undertaken over the 5 years to continue to renew the aging infrastructure that we have. So, really it's about your annual operating costs and the capital investment that you may need to make today and save into the future to replace our aging system. Through a 25-year model, I talk about 2 sides of the ledger. So that's one side of the ledger. Then what type of funding do you need on the other side of the ledger to basically be able to pay for both those operating and capital costs? So I think a lot of the information is there, at least in a 5-year snapshot in the budget book. And I certainly hear your comments. And if you're hearing that from residents, that's perhaps a takeaway from us about how we shape that conversation, maybe a little bit differently than we have in the past.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Finally, the motion talks about a water rebate program and the high efficiency retrofit. we have heard in previous reports that the majority of our costs for the water utility are fixed costs and less on consumption. I do support high efficiency retrofits, but what I want to know is, through the chair, is that, how much is that for would save money for people, and how much of it is just for the overall, I don't know if I want to say protection of the utility, or to, for the benefit of the utility, and how much it would be for benefit of the consumer?
So Lacey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to refer that question again to Ms. Bryden or Ms. Mills to answer.
Ms. Mills, take that one.
Through the chair, the high efficiency retrofit portion does have a lower impact on the affordability piece, just because of our rate structure, as you mentioned. It does have a higher impact on the conservation goals. And so that's where that piece of that program comes from. That's why it's the twofold approach, with the rebates to address the affordability side and the retrofit program to help with the conservation piece.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
You're good? Okay. Thank you very much. Where are we going now? Okay. Councillor Zahidnia, go ahead.
Okay. So I just have a few questions. So my first one is regarding, just to make sure I understand the process being proposed here. So either we select, one of these options or nothing. And if one of these options is selected or something else, it will be presented to us in Q2 of next year for consideration in the budget process for 2023. Is that accurate, through the chair?
So Lacey, that goes to you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so that is correct. We would go away, whatever motion or option or directions provided by council, our intent would be to go away and develop a program and come back by the end of Q2 with recommendations on what that program would look like, what we estimate the final cost to be, and seek council approval. Really, there's a choice then, I think, with respect to when we implement that program. I think that's one of the things that we would look at as we develop that program. There's a possibility that you could implement it mid-year, I guess. And we would just have to look at what impact that would have on, for example, funding it through a reserve, or whether council wanted to do a mid-year utility rate increase to reflect that new program, or we could wait to the next fiscal year and add it into the 2023 budget. I think there's a number of options that we would need to explore and that we would bring back to council as part of that direction for us to do work on a program and how it would be funded.
Okay, thank you. So for my next question, Councillor Brasciani had asked about the rate review. So I understand the planned process and the connection to the AMI technology, but I didn't hear a commitment of when that is projected. So I don't know if it's at the end of when we've rolled out AMI throughout the city. Do you have any sense of when it would be feasible for this more special, technical rate review to be possible?
Mr. Chair, I'll refer that question to Ms. Bryden.
Amber, oh, there. Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Zahidniak. So the AMI project is, we're planning to start actually, putting meters into properties by next spring. And we anticipate that'll take probably 3 to 4 years to fully implement. And then we would actually need to be in operation long enough to gather the data that we would need to do a full review. So I would expect that rate review would probably occur in the next, 5-6 years. The actual work would take, 3 to 6 months likely to do. So it would be a while before we would be coming back with that information.
Okay, thank you. Also, will the sustainability, the energy and sustainability framework, will that be addressing water conservation and improved efficiency in relation to our water system specifically?
So, Ms. Bryden, does that go to you, or should we go to Mr.
I
Lee?
think Ms.
Maybe we'll repeat it to him, so just 1 second.
I may have to repeat my question.
Okay, can you repeat the question, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the question that was asked, I just want to confirm it, is will our energy and sustainability framework that we're bringing forward be looking at the sustainability of our water system as well, and how it interrelates with energy usage, if I could paraphrase it?
Yeah.
I'll refer that question to Ms. Folk.
Well, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Of course, the Energy and Sustainability Framework is focused on moving to net zero and greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, the production of water and piping it to Regina is quite energy efficient, requires some work, and of course, Buffalo Pound is working on that. So again, going back to retrofits and what that looks like, as well as improving leakage, are important elements to that.
Okay, and I maybe just have one more question. So in the report, this on page 6 for your reference, it talks about, we know that the distance to the Buffalo Pound water treatment plant is one factor in our higher cost of water here. But the report also mentions the higher cost of treating water and wastewater in the prairies. And so I'm wondering if someone can provide some more details about why in the prairies in general it's higher.
Okay, Mr. Lacey, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will refer that question to Mr. Doney.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in general, it's an accurate statement to say that the cost to treat water is higher in the prairies. So if we look at Buffalo Pound and our water source, it's a challenging water source to treat, and it fluctuates throughout the year. So it's not a steady flowing river like we might see in other cities. It's a lake that is a challenge to treat. On the wastewater side, we have a very high quality wastewater treatment plant that provides excellent effluent that's discharged into Wascana Creek, compared to other cities that may be on the coast that don't do that same level of treatment. So it's just a general statement to say that the water that we treat is a bit more challenging for drinking water, and the wastewater effluent that we meet are slightly higher standards than you might see across other jurisdictions in Canada.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Shaw, go ahead.
I would like to just kind of go off of what Councillor Zakiniak just said, efficiencies. When does efficiencies fall on our responsibility as a homeowner or as the payer of water? And I'm going to go back to when I used to haul water on our farm. Guess what? I didn't use a dishwasher. I used just half a sink full of water to wash my dishes. We didn't all get to bath in different bath water. We didn't get to take a 20-minute shower. Those efficiencies fell on the backs of us to use our water modestly. Second of all, we have just given a tax deferral for seniors and for people with disabilities. We all voted yes. It was a wonderful thing. This falls on the back, and that actually, I mean, it didn't cost us anything, but we as a city are taking on so much responsibility in our tax bases that when is it we need to stop? Where's the stop with this? It's one thing and then one thing and then one thing, and it's getting so expensive for people to live in Regina that aren't low income. Where's the initiative to say, hey, I'm going to go get another job because I have to pay these bills? When I bought my house, I had to cost down everything that I had to pay. That's the way it went. When I rented a place, if I had to pay rent and include my utilities, I had to take that into my income. I know people of this low of income, and they're fine. They don't get to go out for supper 4 nights out of the month. They get to go out for supper 1 night out of the month. SGI, we have a vehicle. We own a vehicle. We drive a vehicle. we don't get a break because we have a low income, so then therefore we have to, our licenses are cheaper. No, we have to buy a cheaper car, so then we pay less insurance. So I would like to know, and I mean, my comment is, where does it stop? This falls on us as people. If we make low income, we have to adjust our living to afford our income. And I've had to do it in my past. My children have had to do it. Many friends of mine have had to do it. And I don't think that this is the right way. We've given a lot of money into our housing. We've spent a lot of money into that. And that's that larger bill that people with lower incomes have to pay. We want to make sure everyone is safe and has a good house to live in. But we've given so much, and it's, when does it stop? And this water, I mean, what really is each household going to save if this option goes through? A couple dollars a month? It's not going to make or break them in paying their bills at the end of the month. So I will not be supporting this, and those are my reasons why. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think, Councillor Mancinelli, you want to go again?
Yeah, I thought I had some time to think, and I just wanted to voice my mind. I really, really want to support this, but I don't think I can. When I think of the conversations I've had with the residents I represent, water affordability has been a big deal in my area. I know especially amongst the retired residents, pensioners, especially after they lose a spouse, there are fairly high tax rates in my area. There's a lot of upkeep in these houses and these residents. I don't think any of them would qualify for the help that this program offers, but they're coming to a point in their life when they need the help, and they'd have to end up paying extra to help others. And I know this is a prevalent thing that I encounter and I've talked about quite a bit. If it wasn't for the lead connections being looked after so quickly, there is only one taxpayer. Not everything can be helped at once, but for these reasons, I just can't support this right now. I think it's very necessary. I think it's very needed. But because it would leave too many out that would be affected, I can't do it. So that's just my little 2 bits.
Okay, Councillor Mancinelli, thank you. Councillor Bashani, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one follow-up question. I want to make sure, do we still offer, or I know we offer it for paying people's taxes, but do we offer like a budget type billing so it's the same amount every month for individuals so they can actually plan for, so they know what their bill is through the chair?
Lacey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll refer that question to Ms. Bryden.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, we still offer a budget billing. We also work with residents who are struggling to pay their utility bill to help them set up payment plans. So those pieces of work are available for property or for utility customers.
Great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Stevens, do you want to close? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I very much appreciate the comments. Just a couple of points of clarification. I understand the challenge of using a fairly inflexible tax and utility model as a redistribution element or mechanism, but we do it all the time. All the time. In fact, those who have spoken against this have gladly supported some of those programs. We already have a means-tested system for bus passes and for access to leisure facilities. Paperwork's already done. Just a matter of how we calculate and cost it out. Council supports that. We already do this. The other point is, well, and it kind of bridges with the province, we could actually look to the Crown utilities for similar programs. When you pay your gas bill, you subsidize efficiency programs that are funded by Sask Energy. The provincial government used Sask Power as a COVID redistribution mechanism with a rate rebate system that benefited higher income residents like us. So the utilities are already being used that way. And we've already seen in the environmental scan that about a dozen communities in Canada already are using their utility in this fashion. Some questions here about the rate review. Well, I've lived in a variable rate jurisdiction. It will not, just manage your expectation, it will not reduce your actual cost. It's a market-based mechanism. I've seen it, how it functions. It's not going to make water, especially the fixed costs, more affordable. Final point, I think, is about the community wellness citations here. I'm just going to say, if we're going to take that strategy seriously, we can't just pay lip service to it, and that's what we're doing. We've talked about, well, council is not indifferent to the plight. Well, you can be aware of all these problems all you want, but until you're actually willing to commit to them, they're just plans and strategies with no teeth. And I would say that we can't keep blaming the province for everything. Yes, it would be great if they had better income supports, basic income, you name it. They don't. So we have to worry about what we can control, and we can control this. It's been costed. We're asking for a report. It will make a meaningful difference, not to homeowners. That's not just the cost of home ownership. It's just the cost of survival. It's not a frivolous expense. It's water, and ours is the most expensive in Western Canada for a reason. And there's a mechanism in here to help out. We also provide tax breaks to organizations like the airport, and we've supported that. That's subsidized by other taxpayers. There's an economic development component, but ultimately it was so we could get direct flights to Florida. So I think what I find both hilarious and painful is that we will subsidize Sunwing destinations more than we would put money behind low-income residents in our city who struggle. We're going to talk about an expense later this meeting. We can't define our commitment to these issues just by going to fundraisers and galas. We have to define our commitment to this by the policies that we put into place and the resources we put behind them. I mention this because I guess in the next couple of months we'll probably come back to this type of redistribution model. Yes, we already do it. I think we just need to be consistent. Either we have a program in place, we have tax breaks for select customers and residents, or we don't. And I think it's a real struggle for me to see this kind of doublespeak around the use of these programs when we do it already and other utilities do. And it's a huge issue. I know it's not a prevalent issue in all communities, but it's certainly an issue in some of the core areas of this city where people struggle just to pay their water bills or they don't. It is far more for them than taxes in those communities. So I hope that we are sincere with our commitment to the community wellness principles, and this is one mechanism of even just starting that discussion. And administration will return to us with a report that will give more complete costing of what this would entail. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Councilor Stevens, you finished your, so I'll call on the clerk to call a vote on Councilor Stevens' motion that's in front of you. Okay, we need some.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll begin with Councilor Stevens, please. Councilor Stadnichuk.
Oh, in support.
Councilor Hawkins.
Opposed.
Councilor Bresciani.
Opposed.
Councilor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councilor Shaw.
Opposed.
Councilor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councilor Mancinelli.
I'm in favor.
I believe Councilor Moll is away from the meeting. Mayor Masters is on the line.
Opposed.
Councilor Findura.
Opposed.
The vote is 5-5, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
It is deemed to have lost.
Okay. So we'll carry on with the discussion on the main.
Well, there is no main.
There's no
We
main,
need
so
somebody to move a motion.
So someone to move the motion? Councilor Hawkins? Thank you. That's right.
Okay, which is removed. We're done.
We're done. Okay. Okay. Anyone needs to? Okay. Do you have? St. Councilor, anyone wants to speak to this report? Oh, there we go. This report. Go ahead.
I would like to move option 2. And then I would also like to include the high efficiency retrofit program for all low income customers on to option 2.
Okay. Just wait for the clerk to put it up on the screen.
Whenever it makes sense, I can speak to it.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Should I go ahead and speak to it?
Yeah,
or
go
wait
ahead.
a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so based on what I've heard from folks today, I think that option 2 is a small step that we can take in this regard. And, you know, as was brought up before, this, by committing to option 2, what we are saying here is that this program will be developed for our consideration by Q2 of next year. We know that our water rates are very expensive here. This is a low-cost option when you compare it to what was proposed with option 1. Option 2 says that that there would be a one-time 0.2 to 0.5% utility rate increase. I think that that's reasonable for residents to pay to help make water more affordable for low-income seniors. And we also know, as discussed last time with our the tax deferral that we put in place, that seniors have limited options in terms of what can they do to bring in more income to their homes. And we also saw a majority of respondents on the survey supporting some sort of affordability programs for low-income residents. We have committed to a sustainable and inclusive community. I think this is a small step. The high energy retrofits, of course, they are important for everyone, but they are less affordable for low-income residents. We'll be discussing, in the sustainability framework, broader conversations about energy efficiency will occur, but it is out of grasp of our low-income residents to be able to invest in retrofits to conserve water, like low energy toilets, low flush toilets, and other mechanisms for improving their water conservation. And I also think, and so when we talked about the high efficiency retrofit program, that is a 35 cents monthly fee. And I think that is very reasonable and supports our commitment to a sustainable community. I think that's all I have at this moment.
Okay, Councilor Zainiak, the clerk would like some clarification from you, or he's going to ask you a question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we have the motion on the floor, Councillor, or on the screens, Councillor Zainiak. I just want to make sure that we understand what you want. This is essentially the same as option 1, but instead of it being for all low-income residents, this is just for low-income seniors, correct?
Actually, so the low-income seniors part in relation to the water rebate,
okay,
and the high efficiency retrofit, I wanted to insert that part of option 1 into option 2. So the high efficiency retrofit program was for all low-income customers.
Okay.
My understanding of the proposal of that is that it was a cap of, I believe, $300,000, first come, first served. Once that cap is reached, then, by applications, then that program has been maximized for the year. So I'm fine with the water rebate specifically for low-income seniors as option 2 proposes, but I think the high efficiency retrofit, there's no reason that can't be for all residents, first come, first served.
All right, thank you. So with direction, I'll provide direction to the Deputy Clerk that it's to develop a water rebate program for low-income seniors. We can just add for low-income seniors, and the high efficiency retrofit program for all however the wording was, for low-income
Customers is what it says there.
Okay, for all low-income customers.
Yes, for all
All right,
low-income customers.
that covers it now for you? We've got that accurate?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
That motion one was already defeated. So how is it able to be brought back into now a new motion through the chair?
Mr. Clerk?
It's essentially a separate option, Councillor Bresciani, because the first one was a water rebate program for all low-income residents. This one is targeted to low-income seniors, and then Councillor Zahidniak has added the amendment to also include the retrofit. So because you have one was all residents and this is just low-income seniors, they would seem to be distinct, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mrs. Zahidniak, that's it?
Yeah, that's
Anything
all
further?
I'll probably close, but that's all I have for now.
Okay. Anyone on the motion for Councillor Zahidniak? Okay, just 1 second. Councillor Hawkins, go ahead.
The first is a procedural point. I'm just going to mention it, but I don't want to press it. We now effectively have two motions on the floor. The amending motion, the second motion, contradicts the motion that I moved, but let that go. This is worth discussing. My difficulty with this is that the very same arguments that applied to the previous motion apply to this one. Again, it's laudable and necessary that we consider programs to support low-income seniors. The problem is that the water rate utility program is not the appropriate vehicle for doing this. It's not the appropriate vehicle for income redistribution. We should be looking at programs which assist low-income seniors, and indeed we'll look at one a little later in this meeting. But I think that we have to take very great care that we don't turn our self-sustaining, fully recoverable water utility rate structure into an income redistribution structure. And we've just had that debate. In terms of retrofits, there's no logical reason why you'd restrict retrofit programs to all low-income customers. There's a bigger question about whether that kind of program should be developed for all customers. And that's the exact kind of thing that I think that the review of water rates and water metering rates will deal with. And indeed, if we wanted to look at that ahead of time, I suppose we could do it. But it just isn't logical that that kind of program would be restricted to seniors, to low-income seniors. Maybe it should be for all seniors. Maybe it should be for everybody. So this motion, again, well-intentioned, is not attached to an appropriate vehicle, the water utility rate, to achieve the objectives that are sought. So I'll oppose this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. The high-efficiency retrofit should not be part of this motion. We should have not allowed that. So, Mr. Clerk, if you could
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My apologies, Council. It is my mistake and oversight. The high-efficiency retrofit program for all low-income customers should not be ruled in order for this. You did already previously voted that against in the tie vote. I was still thinking that this was all tied into seniors, but it is just for low-income. So, with respect, Councillor Zahidniak, if this was just for low-income seniors, it would be in order. But because it has already been voted on earlier this morning, that portion of your motion, as written, is going to be stricken.
In that case, I'd be fine with changing it to low-income seniors because I'd rather it be in there than not. So
Okay.
if we can change it to specifically low-income seniors, I'd prefer that than it just disappearing from the motion.
Then as the original
Yes,
intent that we had assumed,
sure.
that would now be in order. Because it
Okay.
is just targeted to one group, that being the low-income seniors.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to Council. Who's, I think Councillor Hawkins, I'm not sure if you, I still have you green here, so you okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've said what I had to say.
Okay. Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you. I'll support the motion. I agree with Councillor Hawkins. It's likely to sort of divide on the same lines as the last vote. It's quite similar. I suppose my comment is, I hear those who are opposed to this motion and the past one saying, at some point, we're committed to doing some things for low-income folks, but not today, another day. So it will be good when we get to that date to see the enthusiastic support. So I'm looking forward to it, but I will support this, though I anticipate it might fall the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli?
Thank you. I was very, very toward the last option that we voted on. This one's a little bit easier for me. Seniors are a group that had a lot of consideration for. The costs are a little bit affordable. Like I said before, if we didn't have to fix the whole lead connection problem and everything that went wrong with this utility in the last 100 years, in the next 2, I'd like to support more of this because I think it's very, very necessary. I totally agree with Councillor Hawkins. Governments have been talking about these problems, been shifting blame when it is their responsibility for far too long. I'm part of a government now. I'm just going to wear it and I'm going to vote for this because at the end of the day, problems have to be fixed. We can't just talk about fixing them. This is a small step towards that. And with their demographics and what I stated earlier about pensions and the loss of a spouse, I think this is going to be a more prevalent problem in the years to come. So I'll support this.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to go to Councillor Shaw next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just have a question. So if we were to do this, what would be the cost to utility users? Would anyone know that? Through the chair?
Mr. Lacey, are we playing the buttons? Who's going to do this? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lacey.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the rebate portion, which is outlined in option 2 in the report, we estimate would have a cost between $300,000 and $500,000 a year, which is between a 0.2 and a 0.5% increase in utility rate. I don't know if we've costed out the second part of this motion, which is a subset of the one that was talked about earlier, high efficiency retrofit just for seniors, but perhaps I'll ask Ms. Bryden or Ms. Mills if they have any data on the high efficiency retrofit cost targeted only at low income seniors.
Ms. Mills?
Ms. Mills? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. We have not done specific analysis on this, but it would be less than the $300,000 as presented in option 1. In discussing with other utilities that have high efficiency retrofit programs, they have found that seniors are not as likely to partake in those programs. And part of that is helping them understand the benefit of retrofits because of sometimes takes a while to recognize those benefits for them. They're more long-term benefits for the household. And so I guess what I'm saying is it would be less than the $300,000 as outlined in option 1.
So between $300,000 and $500,000 plus another $300,000 to $500,000. Am I correct in that, for the chair?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it'd be between $300,000 and $500,000 for the first part of the motion, and then an additional amount that we expect would be less than $300,000, but we just don't have that number. So $300,000 to $500,000 plus probably something between $100,000 and $300,000.
I was going to say, so maybe $150,000 or so. You're looking at about $450,000. So another question I have: would this rely on the city to be hiring any new staff to do any of this, through the chair?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Bryden or Ms. Mills just to comment on how they see that program administered in other jurisdictions.
Ms. Bryden, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So depending on the final program that's approved, yes, it might, but in order to determine exactly how that looks, we'd have to go through the full analysis of how this how the program would work and the process. So when we came back with a program, we'd be able to outline if there is additional staffing levels required. I anticipate that the cost of the program would include probably one staff person, likely, for administration.
So do we have any idea how much this would save a senior's household, through the chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll refer that as well to Ms. Bryden.
Ms. Mills? I'll refer it to Ms. Mills.
Our very preliminary, through the chair, sorry, preliminary analysis on the rebate portion only shows that it would be around $20 per month as a rebate. But the program would likely be tailored to income levels. So the rebate would be adjusted based on the income level of the family.
So if I'm a senior and I make $20,000, I'll probably see $15 less on my utility bill. Is that correct, through the chair? So you're going off of 18,520 is low income, correct? And then 35,000 is for 4 people. So if I'm a senior and I make 17,000, I'll probably see maybe a couple dollars less than the $20. Is that correct, through the chair? Approximately.
Through the chair, it would likely go the other way, in that your rebate would be more.
Oh, right.
If your income is lower.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, again, very preliminary analysis, but based on the data we had available, likely those lower income levels would be around a $40 rebate.
Okay, so it's, okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, got one more here. Okay, Councillor Bashani, go ahead.
Thank you. So have we had, I guess, have we had many requests from seniors in this regard regarding unable to pay their bills, through the chair?
Okay. DeLacy, go to you.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I will refer that to Ms. Bradden.
Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. So I'm not sure specifically if when we're talking with customers, if we can specifically identify whether or not they're seniors or it's really hard to determine. Certainly, I know we have had some conversations with individuals that have indicated they are seniors living on fixed incomes. But again, it's not something we would track necessarily, and it's, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Through the chair, how would this be determined? So if someone is, their name is on the bill, right, but maybe they don't own the property, how would that work then for the retrofits? Do you have to be an actual homeowner, or, like, again, could this be that all of a sudden people start using seniors for that retrofit program?
Lacey, we'll go to...
In this case, through the chair?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I will refer kind of that program detail to either Ms. Mills or Ms. Bradden.
Ms. Mills?
Ms. Mills, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Again, it would be dependent on the program. That's part of what we'd bring back, but likely it would be based on the utility customer. So who is paying the utility bill would qualify for the program.
So, and sorry, did we say that this would be a mill rate increase if it was, or a no increase?
Through you, Mr.
Ms.
Chair.
Lacey?
What the report is looking at is it would be a rate increase to the utility rate, not on the property tax side, but to the utility rate. And as we mentioned, the first portion of the motion, we expect that rate increase would be between 0.2 and 0.5, and then there would be a little bit more as it relates to the high efficiency retrofit. So I think the 0.2 to 0.5 is probably an accurate range that we would come back with a more definitive number if this motion passes.
Okay. So I just want to be clear on kind of just what I've heard today. So we heard that it's a cost between $450,000 to $650,000. Now, I just want to be clear, is that like a one-time cost or is that ongoing?
Mr. Lacy, that going to you? Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so this would be an annual program, so that dollar amount would be available every year. But the rate increase would just happen once, and then you'd have that revenue in your base. And as the population grows, you may have to adjust that slightly, but it would be kind of a one-time rate increase, but the program would be there annually.
And I heard that it may just be a $20 rebate, depending on...
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll refer that back to Ms. Mills. I think she was referring to, yes, the rebate portion of the program around that piece. It would vary on income level, but you could confirm that, Ms. Mills.
Ms. Mills, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, the rebate portion would vary depending on the income of the applicant. Again, preliminary analysis shows that could be kind of ranging between that $20 to $40 depending on income levels. There are other options of administering a rebate. It could be a percentage. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar value. So that's part of what we would bring back as options in that report.
Okay. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shut this off. Okay, anyone else? Any further discussion on Councillor Hedniak moving the motion here? Not? Okay. Councillor Hedniak, did you want to close off your...
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So, as we heard from administration and see in the report, in terms of the rebate for seniors, what we've seen is this would be a 0.2 to 0.5 one-time utility increase. I do consider that a very small step, especially when it can have an impact for seniors on a fixed income of $20 to $40 a month. That may not sound like much to some of us, but that is significant when you are a senior who is living on a fixed income and has no capacity to increase your income. That's what a fixed income is. However, in relation to the high efficiency retrofits, I considered a 35-cent monthly fee to be completely reasonable and would be happy to pay that to help make retrofits more accessible to low-income customers. We've heard that it would be even lower for if we did this program specifically for low-income seniors. And I think this would also, like folks have mentioned, that it's important that we have high-efficiency retrofit programs for everyone. Absolutely, that's important. This would be a first step as administration works to develop what this program could look like. And then we could consider how would we expand this program in what ways that for everybody to participate in. I would think that the supports needed to make it feasible for low-income individuals to access retrofits might be a bit different than the rest of us, but I think it would lay the groundwork for us to consider how do we do this in a larger capacity for other residents in our community. I really do think that this is, there's not a lot at stake here with this one-time 0.2 to 0.5 utility rate increase to make an impact for seniors in our community who are struggling to get by. And I would really encourage folks to support this motion. And also to note that any answers we don't have will come forward in this report in Q2. And we also have the option at that time, once we have more information, to either move forward with this or not. So all we're asking for at this point is administration to do some additional work to develop a program for our consideration. And I think it's a good option for us to consider. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Hedniak closed off on her. So Councillor Hedniak motion. Mr. Clerk, can you call the vote, please?
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Zahidniak, please.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk,
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins,
Opposed?
Councillor Stevens,
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani,
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc,
In favor.
Councillor Shaw,
In favor.
Mayor Masters,
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Carried 9-1, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on. Thank you very much, everyone. We are going to move to, we consider item EX 21-64, Real Hotel lease, and I believe we have representative online to answer questions only. So they will not be presenting, that is there for questions. So if anyone has questions I'm going to first call, who's on the line? Gary Fisher, are you there?
Yes.
Just for questions. Okay, so should I give this to Mr. Lacey to introduce, and then we'll go into questions? Okay. Yeah. So Mr. Fisher, just hang on the line. I'll get Mr. Lacey to introduce the report, and then we'll go to questions.
So thank you.
I believe Mr. Reed's on the line also.
Okay, Mr. Reed is there too. Okay, just hang tight. I'll get.
I am, Mr. Chair.
I'll get Mr. Lacey to introduce, and then we'll go to you.
Yes, thank you. So further to that campus lease agreement between the City of Regina and the Regina Exhibition Association, which Council's dealt with in the recent past, Riel is requesting consent to enter into a sublease with Genesis Hospitality Incorporated for the development of a 140-room hotel on the Riel campus. And as this sublease potentially totals 90 years in total when all available renewals are available under this lease, given the length of that sublease, it does require approval of council, and therefore the report is before you today seeking that approval.
Okay, before we go any further, can I have someone to move the report? Councilor Bresciani? Okay, so Mr. Reed, Mr. Fisher, I'm just gonna see if any members here have a question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just 1 second, it's coming. Okay, Councilor Zahednia has a question. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just curious about the proposal for the lease for up to 90 years with extensions. What is the reasoning for, if someone can help me out, for the applicant requesting that, and then what would be our reasoning for administration supporting that? Like, why 90 years? Through the chair, please.
So, Mr. Fisher, maybe I can ask you to provide some detailed questions, but a great question, and through the chair. I think the answer to it is because this is a lease and not the sale of land, I think the hotel organization is looking to extend those rights to the maximum capacity. That being said, the commitment has a couple of checkpoints and a couple of renewals, so it certainly could be 90 years, but it will likely be less than that. And I think the purpose of it is, prior to them making a fairly substantial capital investment, they would like to secure the land for as long a period of time as is reasonable. And Mr. Fisher, you may have some comments specifically that you want to add. Yeah, no, I think that sums it up. In order for them to recoup the capital costs of a building of that magnitude, they would need at least 40 years for the numbers to work.
Okay, so just remember, members, the questions are being posted just to Riel.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll have a questions to administration. So we're going to confuse the matter here,
Okay.
our discussion. So these questions are directed to Riel for them to answer on their point. So any other question? President Hedniak?
Yeah, I do have a couple. If I understand this correctly, for the renewal periods, I think this is a question for Riel, so we'll see. It says the rent will be based on fair market rent for unimproved land of a similar size and location. And so because this is talking about renewal periods, wouldn't it be based on improved land rates? And I don't know if Riel is able to address that question or if I need to save it for administration.
Mr. Reid, is that to you?
Yeah, I think we can take a start to that question. And so our process all along, and we have a third-party real estate agent that's involved in Colliers locally. And so our process is we value the land in its current market condition as a lease transaction, and essentially put an annual or a periodic growth level that we believe is consistent with best market practice. So to your question, which is, I believe in 40 years when there's a hotel built, will that valuation occur again? And for the renewal period, through the chair, yes, it would. For the initial term, the price points are fixed.
Okay. And another question is, so it mentions in the report that REAL has committed through the site master plan to incorporate energy efficiency and prioritize sustainability. Can you give me any additional information about how this development would be either required or recommended or suggested to do that work?
Mr. Reid?
Yeah, through the chair, I think I'm not going to give you a specific answer because I don't have one right now. What I will tell you is that we are working through the process of our site master plan, which includes the environmental standards by which we will build. And the intention is to bring that back to council in alignment with our lease extension in December of this year. So we will have very specific clarity, I believe, on the targets that we hope to achieve, pending your approval on our site master plan, which will occur prior to the development permit being issued for this hotel. So we're working with your administration currently, so I won't have a specific answer, but what I can tell you is I do think we will be clear based on council's approval of our site plan in advance of this development proceeding. And so we're working through that. Their development permit will be issued in advance of council providing clarity and approval on the environmental standards for the REAL 2.0 development.
Okay. Another question I have is about the requirement for the membership in the Regina Hotel Association. Is that question better for yourselves or for administration?
Mr. Reid?
Through the chair, I think we'd be happy to take that one.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask more specifically. So it says that there's a requirement of an initial 5-year membership. So my question is, that number of 5 years, why not longer, or how did you arrive at this 5-year membership number?
Mr. Reid?
So through the chair, I think the background is important, and I'm assuming that all council knows, but probably a good refresher for us, is the Regina Hotel Association is a voluntary buy-in program of hoteliers within the community. So it's different than a bed tax or a hotel levy. Essentially, the owners have to approve the fact that they are willing to add a fee to every hotel rental that is either paid by the customer or paid by the hotelier themselves to support marketing initiatives and sales initiatives in their community. And so in partnership that we share with the Regina Hotel Association, which is quite strong, and certainly they're a strong advocate of what we do, we advocated that this hotel would have a 5-year minimum commitment. I think like anything else, if the hotel group did not feel the value for that investment was there, we didn't want to handcuff them to a program that they didn't see benefit in. So to your question, through the chair, this is a bit of as long as the Regina Hotel Association delivers value, we don't believe that this hotel group will back away from that support. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a private company, and the hotel association has to deliver value for them and others. And so this creates an opportunity for a relationship, but I think the long-term opportunity between the hotelier and the RHA will be proven in sales and tourism growth.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Rashani.
Thank you very much for being here today. I just want to ask, in regards to the hotel and it being on the land, can you just also cite the benefits around the hotel for this event complex, through the chair?
Mr. Reid?
Through the chair, I think that the primary benefit that I would suggest is when we bid conferences and major events, which we regularly do in conjunction with economic development as well as the Regina Hotel Association, The first question that everybody has is, do you have enough square footage to be able to host, which the International Trade Center quite often does. The second question that is on that approval listing is, do you have a connected or adjacent hotel? And where we find ourselves challenged quite often in being competitive with other jurisdictions is we don't have what they would deem to be a connected or adjacent hotel. So the first benefit that I would suggest through the chair is that I do think the positioning of this property and this private investment will make a significant impact on the tourism industry for our community. The other side to this that's valuable is, the reality of it is that anytime we host a large conference or a large tourism event, this is one of many hotels, and we need the entire inventory to fill up. So first piece is, I do think we become more competitive as a convention center than we had been in the past. I don't want to minimize the fact that this development, which is quite substantive, will have a significant growth in tax base. So you as a city will automatically see a win of one of the most significant developments I think that you've seen since the implementation of the intensification rates in the downtown core. And so this is not an insignificant investment. The other piece, and we've already seen this with the inclusion of McDonald's, is it brings immediate employment to a part of our city that can desperately use it. And so the workforce for this hotel is somewhere between 80 and 100 people, between full-time people. Those are people who will pay taxes, who will have new revenue opportunities, and will develop those skills. And so I think really the three big opportunities around this is it makes us much more competitive in the tourism sector. It creates immediate revenue benefit for us for long term in the form of lease, and for you in the form of commercial tax. And then probably the most important component of it, it creates between 80 and 100 new jobs in North Central. And I think those jobs can have a significant difference on a part of our community that needs it.
Great, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Stanachak, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, question regarding on page 6 of the report, it refers to that Genesis will build a 140-suite hotel complete with parking and landscaping. Is it too early to say how that parking is going to be? Is it going to be underground parking solely for the hotel customers, or will it be surface parking that takes up a lot more of the real campus space?
Mr. Reid?
Yeah, and through the chair and Jerry, I may ask you to jump in with some additional details, but great question. So the parking will actually occur within the lease footprint that is outlined within the document that you have. Our understanding of it at this point, yet to be permitted and approved, is that it will be multi-level parkade structure. So it will not be below ground, but it will be parkade structure. So it won't spill beyond the existing framework of the hotel. It will be for designated use of hotel guests, but the footprint that it will use will be inside essentially the document that you see. In addition to that, I think just to confirm, it will be a structured parking that will be multi-tier adjacent to the hotel itself, but it will not be below ground.
So it would be, through the chair, so it would be used by other users of real, even if they're not staying at the hotel?
Mr. Reid?
Through the chair, it would not be. It would be restricted to hotel guests.
Okay, thank you. I know that there's often exclusivity aspects to contracts like this. Will this interfere in any way with Real's banquet services? Through the chair?
Mr. Reid?
Yeah, through the chair, no, I don't believe it will. And so there, as you can see in the agreement, there is not exclusivity clauses other than the fact that they'll be a partner on campus. Okay. And obviously we'll do our best to help promote them. But it may enhance our banquet services. So one of the limitations we have in the ITC is we don't have a number of breakout meeting rooms, for those of you that are familiar with it. And the hotel will not compete in the convention space, but it is our understanding that they are looking for our input on what sources and sizes of meeting rooms would be complementary to the offerings of the International Trade Center. So I actually think it will be quite complementary if we coordinate properly.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Shaw?
Thank you. I just want to add to what Councillor Sikiniak was talking about, or Stanachek, sorry. The parking will be just for the hotel. Has there ever been any discussion, since we have a lovely hospital right there and we have lovely nurses that need a parking spot, has that ever been discussed, or do you see maybe that potentially being discussed as a parkade addition for our nurses, through the chair?
Mr. Reid?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's a fantastic question, and I can confirm that we have, as Real, have probably hosted upwards of 10 meetings on the discussion of coordinating a parkade structure somewhere between the hospital and our facilities. Nothing that is a commitment at this point, but I think there's genuinely a willingness on behalf of the SHA, as well on behalf of Real, to see if there is a better parking opportunity. We recognize right now that the doctors and nurses and staff, which there's about 1,400 a day, 1,000 of them work during the day, 400 of them work during the night. That's very complementary to our business, where we need 1,000 parking stalls at night and probably less so in the day. And right now they do use the Rio campus, and of course they use parking on the streets as well. So to your point, yes, we've had those discussions. There's not a deal in place yet, but we're optimistic that we'll find one, and they continue to progress, particularly I think as the hospital continues to expand.
Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Any further question to Mr. Reid or Mr. Fisher? Okay, Mr. Reid and Mr. Fisher, thank you very much for joining us and answering questions. I appreciate that. So I would like to ask you now to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you. Okay, before I give it, can I get someone to move this report? Councilor Graciani? Mr. Lacy, or anything else you need to add, or the question to the administration from the committee?
To you, Mr. Chair, I have no additional remarks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there'll be questions to you from, okay, Councilor Zahednia, go ahead.
Okay, so I just have two, I think. So first, I don't know if administration has anything to add to the first question I had asked about why a 90-year lease. The answer that I got was essentially to recoup the capital cost of a building of that magnitude takes at least 40 years. So that's one of the reasons for an extended lease term for them. Does administration have anything to add about why administration recommends that option? Just curious, through the chair, please.
Mr. Lacy?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have a lot to add. Real is a independent municipal corporation, and so their administration is accountable to their board, and they're accountable through here to council, and so we really rely on them to do the appropriate due diligence around kind of these lease negotiations, and so we really have had no, as administration, connection and discussions with Genesis, the company that would be building this hotel. So, with respect to administration doing due diligence around this, we've relied really on Real to do that. Whether 90 years or 70 years, certainly the only general comment I would make is that when a business is making an investment in building infrastructure, vertical infrastructure, a hotel and a parkade in this place, they certainly would have done modeling with respect to what kind of return on investment they expect on an annual basis and how many years it would take to pay for that investment. And so, I can only make the assumption that 90 years was something that they felt, A, that building would be sustainable for that period of time, and B, felt that they wanted to capitalize on their return on that investment over that time period. But 70, 80, 90, really don't have any comment given we weren't involved in those negotiations.
Okay, and so my next question is, in the report it states that Genesis will not need to demolish its facilities at the end of the lease. And so my question is that standard? Is it standard to demolish? Does it just depend? This is mainly for my information.
Yeah. So, through you, Mr. Chair, once again, we weren't directly involved in those discussions, and so I don't know what the conversation was with respect to what the expectation would be of that building after 90 years. I might just ask Mr. Krawchuk, who's our real estate manager, about whether he has any additional information with respect to what industry standards might be. I'm guessing it's probably pretty much across the board, depending on the situation. But Mr. Krawchuk, would you have any additional comment with respect to the demolishment of the building? The building would stand basically after the end of the lease.
Mr. Krawchuk, go ahead.
Through the chair, no, it's a negotiated process, so there may be some value that Real feels that they would be able to maintain with this building should it not be demolished. Again, comes simply down to the negotiation as they work through the lease process. Some landowners prefer that the land is returned to its original state. Others will maintain the building that's been built on the property.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Oh, okay. Councilor Bashani, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. So how does it work with the undergrounds that are going to be needed to tie in for this hotel? Who covers that and how does that work, through the chair?
Mr. Lacey?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So it's our understanding that Real has indicated that it would ensure all utilities would be in place to service that hotel up to the hotel's kind of property line so that they could connect into it. And we understand in discussions with Real, I believe the estimated cost to Real to make that happen, and currently they have an estimate of $200,000. Once again, we're relying on the work that Real has done to make that determination of what work has to happen to bring the utilities to the hotel.
Thank you. And then that would be, so would there be then like an intensification levy because it's obviously intensifying the area? Is that covered? Who covers that, through the chair?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that as this development proceeds, it would be required to go through the appropriate building permitting processes, et cetera. So right now, the intensification levy is in place, and so that would apply. You will note in the report that that the lease payments actually potentially go up after the first 10 years. Essentially, if there's a change in the intensification levy, if it drops by a certain amount, because I think there is some awareness. Council was considering the intensification levy when they were finalizing negotiations here. So under the current program, yeah, they pay for intensification levies, and the lease rate here has been reflective of that. And if intensification levies change by a certain percentage, i.e. drop, the lease rate goes up in year 10 to 20. Greater than what's currently contemplated under the current intensification fee structure.
Thank you. Just a comment. My worry would be if the intensification levy was so high that it would, again, have the developer almost fear to build here. I guess that's the concern.
So through you, Mr. Chair, they are aware. Our understanding is, in talking to Real, that there is intensification levy. And so they're prepared to go ahead and build that based on that. However, it appears that it has, once again, that would be back to the negotiations that we weren't part of. But basically how the lease payments are structured, that appears to have obviously impacted some of the discussions around what that annual lease payment would be, particularly in year 10 through 20.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Steinmetz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, just a question. Has EDR or anyone else talked about what the overall economic benefit of this project would be in terms of jobs or construction plus long-term?
Right. Through you, Mr. Chair, once again, I'm not aware of any of those discussions happening, but once again, we really weren't parties to a lot of that negotiation and discussion.
Okay, thank you. And is there a time frame for when we might see, if everything is approved, a time frame when they are considering construction? I guess I could have asked the previous speaker.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not something I've had a conversation with, but they may have had conversations with our planning department with respect to planning permits. So maybe I'll ask Ms. Hauerluck if she has any indication of kind of when that hotel when we expect to see kind of construction start on that hotel, if everything went well through the permitting process.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know exactly the timing, but right now they need this approval to move forward with any planning applications before submission. If they should submit and get approvals through this and submit by the end of the year, it will take a few months just to go through the process. The lands right now need to be generally, we have an application in to put in a new zoning for the whole site. And so that will be coming before council before the end of the year.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do you want to, Councilor Shen, do you want to close off? No? Okay. All right, then, Mr. Clerk, I'll ask you to call the vote, please.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Berciani, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Councillor Finzura.
In favor.
Carries 10-0. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Council, in your indulgence, we are closing in on our mandatory recess. So before we jump into the next report, why don't we take 15 minutes now, and then we'll start fresh on our next report. Thank you. See you back here, 25 after. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, if everyone please could take your seats, please. Jay, good. How you doing? That's good. Okay. We're going to move. We'll consider EX 2165 Baseball Stadium Letter of Intent. And could I get someone to move, receive, and file for EX 2166? Councilor Bashani? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to administration, Mr. Okay. I guess I need to call anyone opposes to receive and file. No, it's carried. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lacey, I'll hand it over to you to introduce the report, please.
Through you, Mr.
I'll go
Chair,
to
I'll have
Mr.
the city manager
I'll go to
introduce the
city
report.
manager. Okay, city manager, go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So the report in front of you is requesting approval today to direct the administration to enter into discussions with Living Sky Sports and Entertainment and the Regina Red Sox baseball to really explore the feasibility of the need for a new baseball stadium in Regina. So it's important that this is not a commitment by any of the parties that a baseball stadium will proceed. This is, let's do a feasibility study. Let's explore, the work that needs to be done so that we can have a conversation in the community. And the report says, approval up to $100,000. I think it's really important to, if you recall the work that was done by REAL on the Arena Planning Strategy Committee, they did a feasibility study. They did that work directly with their staff. They looked at EDR to do some of the economic impact assessment. The estimated cost of the work that they did when they did the arena piece was around $100,000. So we'll be leveraging EDR. We'll be leveraging REAL to take on some of that work. The $100,000 is really if we incur costs through the city, or we need to provide some compensation to EDR or REAL. They're no different than ourselves. Everyone has a lot on their plate. Organizations are at capacity, but we're optimistic and hopeful that between REAL and EDR, we could reduce those costs. So the report does indicate we'll incur some expense in 2021, and we'll variance that through our budget process that we have approved now. And then, of course, if we need additional funds, we'll bring that forward as a part of the 2022 budget. The question that get asked is, why would REAL do some feasibility work for the city? At the end of the day, it's our municipal corporation. They're involved in sports, events. And if we were to look at pursuing a baseball stadium in Regina, it would most likely be REAL that would be the operator. Living Sky Sports and Entertainment has no interest in being the operator. The Red Sox don't want to be the operator. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of exploration in terms of the feasibility, the cost, the capital costs, the share of capital costs. So this is really do the feasibility, and then we'll come back to council with a full analysis of what it would take to build the stadium, the funding options to build the stadium. There's a few questions that have been asked around location, and this makes no assumption that the location is in the yards. I know there's been some media and public attention to the fact that the Red Sox would love to see it at the yards location. Well, there's no commitment as of a location at this point. That will be a part of the work that is undertaken. And the other, of course, is the cost of this is in the range of anywhere from $20 to $25 million. There's interest to maybe put $1 million on the table between Living Sky and the Red Sox. So it is going to take a capital investment. Obviously, the opportunity to look at private sponsorship and partnership is something that needs to be explored. And then just in context of all of the other priorities that the city has on its plate right now. We're looking at a new aquatic center. There's a new library. There's project after project after project. This is a little bit outside of our rec master plan. It's not a priority in terms of a baseball facility. It doesn't really fit with our rec partnership framework, but it is something that really looks at quality of life and providing opportunities for residents. And I think it does have an opportunity to spur some economic growth and activity around wherever a baseball stadium would be located. So this is a request of council, direct the administration to do the feasibility work, and then bring a further report as to what the stadium would look like, capacity, what the food services would look, what private boxes would look like, etc. And then the big piece is, if this is prioritized and recommended to council, what does the funding look like? Who pays for it? And how is it operated and paid for over the long term? And so be prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. But first, I need a mover on EX 2165. Councillor Hawkins?
To move that we not authorize the city manager to enter into the letter of intent and not advance any funds with respect to this project.
Okay. Yeah, so we're looking at the main motion, Councillor Hawkins, correct? That's your motion. That is the main motion.
That's the main motion, right?
Okay. Okay. Any further on that, Councillor Hawkins, or put it to the floor?
Well, yes, I do. And others may have questions for the administration, but let me explain my reasoning on this. First of all, I don't need a feasibility study to tell me that if the organization can't raise $100,000 to build this baseball stadium, how on earth are they going to talk about and finance a $20 to $25 million stadium? It's just a little bit of common sense. Secondly, this is a professional team. This is something that's solidly in the private sector. Their proper route is to go to Riel and see if they can interest Riel and see if Riel can find the money in its budget if it wishes to pursue this opportunity. Thirdly, we have other priorities in this council for $100,000 right now. We just had a debate. It was a difficult debate. We know we're committed to community wellness. We're committed to the environment and the changes that that's going to mean. This is just not the moment for us to be investing $100,000 in what is not even. It's right now. It's just a dream. There's just nothing here yet. Fourthly, as the city manager has pointed out, this is outside our recreation master plan. And as he indicates, but is not indicated in the report, it doesn't really fit with our partnership model at all. And fifthly, and maybe the most important thing, is I can find no compelling community support in this time of COVID, given that we've got a big stadium that we're worried about financing still. I can find no compelling community support, broad-based, for this project. It is entirely premature, and I think it would be a mistake for the city to invest $100,000 in this. If they want a baseball stadium, they should find the $100,000 or whatever it takes to find a feasibility report and bring something to us that we can work with. But we shouldn't be partnering in something as ephemeral as this right now. It's just not the right time. I'd ask for support for my motion to deny the letter of intent and to not advance funds. I just want to make one other brief comment. I've read the letter of intent. I know it says about 6 times that we're not committed to anything. I'm just a little worried that I don't see anything in the letter of intent, a solid number cap. So, but more importantly, I don't think there's any community support for this at this time. For $100,000, if these people are serious about this, they will go out and do the feasibility work and then bring back something that we can work with. I'd ask that you support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins? Okay, who's got here? We got, all right. Lights changed. Councillor Sayednia, go ahead.
Okay. I'm in agreement with all of the things that Councillor Hawkins just said, and I also am in favor of denying this application, specifically for some of the reasons that Councillor Hawkins mentioned, some of the reasons indicated in the report in relation to where this falls within our recreation master plan priorities, which I believe was 17. So there's many other priorities before this one. I would, if we are successful, if the denial of this application goes through, I would also suggest to the applicant that if they decide to do some of this groundwork themselves, I would be very interested in seeing as well, included in the feasibility study, if they do go forward with one, the feasibility of renovating the existing space. Within the report itself, it seems to be a foregone conclusion that they need to rebuild new. I remember several dates of more recent renovations done at Curry Field. I believe the last one was in 2004. And so not all of it is as dated as the original investment in, I think, 1968. So I would be very curious if they did come back to us in an independent assessment about the feasibility of renovating that existing space. So I just wanted to mention that I would, if the applicant does do a feasibility work, I do wish to see exploration of that option. But further to that, I don't think that this, unfortunately, I can't support this investment from the city at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanichak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, a question. I'm not sure if this question can be answered, but of the other baseball teams, projects in other cities, do we know what the relationship between the city and those teams is? Is it something where there is significant city support, or are they quite independent operations?
Mr. Holden, did you?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's a part of the review that would be done. We do that jurisdictional research, but there are clear examples in a number of Canadian communities where the city has partnered with organizations such as the Red Sox to build these types of facilities. They do become community facilities. There is an opportunity to use some of the luxury boxes, those kinds of things, as community spaces on a year-round basis. Obviously, there would be a lot of work that would need to be undertaken to give council confidence that this is a legitimate investment for council to consider. But in the communities where they have these types of facilities, it does take a significant investment from the municipality, and if there's an opportunity to leverage some federal and provincial money, that's often which moves these projects forward.
Okay, thank you. I am struggling with this request just because I do, as others have said, that we do have other recreational priorities. That doesn't mean that I don't want to see a viable baseball park and team in the city. But I do see it as that the lead really should be with the organization to look at what their options are and the feasibility of either renovating their current space or a brand new space, and to work definitely with City Regina in terms of locations, because we already have the core city partnership framework, and whether or not they are considering a spot down in the core of the center, that definitely needs to be coordinated with that group. But I think I will support Councillor Hawkins' motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but if we did this feasibility study, Would that also outline the provincial's intent to, or the province's intent to give money? Would you be able to find if there's any federal money for this to move forward through the chair?
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, that's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
Obviously, our federal money and provincial money usually comes from infrastructure investment programs. Right now, we still have some funding available through the ISIP program, but it is all prioritized and allocated to projects that council has reviewed and approved. And we have more projects on the list than obviously we have the funding to advance. So this project would be a project that we would have to look at, are there new envelopes of funding? I mean, I think one of the big opportunities would be, what are the organizations able to contribute themselves, or what are the organizations able to, fundraise or through sponsorship, contribute to the program? I don't see that there would be, guaranteed provincial or federal funding, just given all the other priorities that we have and the limited, resources that we have.
So I'm taking that as a...
No.
Yeah. That's a great no answer. My next question, through the chair, if this $100,000 was left out of this letter of intent, would that make a difference with us moving forward, council?
Mr. Holden, where we go with that?
So through Mr. Chair, the 100,000
Yeah.
is a conservative estimate to do this kind of work. This will do a review. It'll create the business case for whether or not a stadium makes sense or doesn't make sense. It'll explore location. There is no capacity within the city or really within REAL or EDR to just add another thing onto the list. So there's a definite cost to do this. So unless the Red Sox and Living Sky Sport and Entertainment were to say, we'll do the work and we'll cover the costs fully, it would still require some resources from the city, which would then, redirect people to from other priorities to this project. That's why we put the cost in.
Yes, and that's what I was kind of wondering, is if there's any way that Living Skies, or they would pay for that $100,000, could we then still go ahead with the letter of intent based on the fact that they'll pay the $100,000? Is that a possibility through the chair?
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the letter of intent was really to form a collaborative partnership to say, let's explore this.
Mm-hmm.
No commitments. I think a few of the other councillors have said, put that responsibility onto the two organizations to explore, create the feasibility. Could we sit around the table and participate in the conversations? Yes. But we wouldn't be a significant contributor to the work that needed to be done.
Right.
But when you start to talk about locations, obviously, there are a number of locations that potentially could be on city property. So we would participate, but not to the same extent if there isn't funding available.
So can I ask another question further to that, solely because I don't know and I'm a new counselor? When we built the stadium for the Riders, can you give me a little bit of a history on how that feasibility study happened, or the cost who incurred on that? And was it, because I keep going back to the fact that there's $1 million of private money that is promised. So is that normal? Is that abnormal to compare to what we have? I just have the Mosaic Stadium to compare this to. Would that be all right through the chair to ask?
Mr. Holden?
So through Mr. Chair, I'll just give a high level answer.
Please.
The stadium project started out as a renovation and an improvement to the existing Taylor Field. And then, of course, it required significant capital investment. And then it really became an opportunity for, a provincial investment to build a stadium for the province. So there was a lot of investment, feasibility work done, and then eventually it came to the city. And it's a stadium that obviously the primary tenant is the Riders, and we've seen the risk of what's happened around, interest in professional sports and even the impacts of COVID. But it is a community stadium, and sees a lot of other uses, and I think it's being leveraged to see more and more use, whether it was Icefield this past winter. We do have soccer in the facility. We have Regina Minor football, high school football. It's going to be a significant site for, any winter festival activities. So it is a bit of a different project, and of course there was significant investment from the province. There were some loans provided. The riders made an investment. So the model is a bit different, but it was in the millions and millions to do the feasibility from both the province and the city. This is a much smaller scale project. So it's hard to make a comparison.
Right, and so one other thing, just to kind of add to that, I understand the advertising within Mosaic Stadium has been an issue, a huge issue. Has that ever been discussed with this feasibility study about the changes of advertising through this ball diamond? Has that ever been discussed through the chair?
Walden?
So through Mr. Chair, so we have a sponsorship and naming rights position within Miss Folks area. Again, when the stadium was built, there was a negotiation with the riders, where the riders actually pay the city an annual fee, and of course then they have the rights for advertising and sponsorship. Every opportunity creates a negotiation, and if this type of a facility was built, obviously sponsorship, advertising, naming rights is an avenue or an opportunity to provide revenue, whether that's for the capital construction or whether that's for the ongoing operations and maintenance.
Right. And I just, from what I know, I hope we learn from that moving forward. My next question, has there ever been talk about a utilization of this ball diamond during the winter time through the chair?
Mr. Walden?
So through Mr. Chair, that is part of the work that you would look at.
Okay.
How would you utilize this facility in the winter? There are some other examples in Western Canada where there has been a bit of a community space created by some of the luxury boxes, et cetera, that are available to the community when it's not baseball season. So there's options. Those would have to be explored as a part of the review and the study.
Yes, well, I think it would be a great place to have a snowboarding. But that's all I have. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilor Bashani?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So have we entered into any other letter of intents like this that are similar in fashion previously through the chair? To explore opportunities and options?
Mr. Walden?
So through you, Mr. Chair, over time we've had a number of facilities that we have partnered in terms of constructing, and one example that always gets referenced is the work with Regina Minor football and Regina soccer, and the Leibel Field investment. So that one came as an opportunity to actually leverage some provincial and federal money in terms of improving a sports venue. In this instance, we've been approached directly. Are you willing to commit to a letter of intent? And we're in front of you today because we want to basically let council make that decision as to, is this a priority given everything else that we have on our plates? So the projects are usually a smaller investment than this one. If you go back to the Leibel Field example, it was probably around a $3 or $4 million project that was cost shared between the province and the city and the two sport organizations, and they've continued to make significant investment into that facility over time. So this one it's a little more expensive, but the request came from the organizations to say, are you willing to enter into an LOI with us?
Okay, thank you for that. Have you had discussions with the Living Skies and the Red Sox in regards to if they have accessed or started conversations with provincial government through the chair for funding, through the chair for this?
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware that they have been talking to the provincial government. I think, the first step in their mind is the city on board? Is the city prepared to really explore whether or not the ballpark is feasible? And then I think that would be a next step.
Okay. So we heard that this starts, similar to soccer and similar to the football, kind of in the ways that we've started with the smaller minor football, that kind of thing. I guess for me, I would say that, or one other question, do we know that if in this 100,000, it'll be more than 100,000, and Red Sox and Living Skies would also be paying for that? This is just our share. Can you just clarify that through the chair?
Mr. Holden?
So through Mr. Chair, the letter of intent does talk about whatever costs it requires to get this feasibility study done. Obviously, we'll negotiate exactly what the costs are and which partner is going to make a contribution. This will go through feasibility. This will get us to some conceptual designs. If the project was then to advance to the next stage and make it on our priority list for investment, then the next phase, obviously, to get to detailed design, it's usually in the range of 10% of the construction costs. So there'd be a future investment that would be required to actually take it to detailed design and preparation of construction documents. So this first phase is feasibility, and the expectation would be that both organizations would have to contribute some funding to the feasibility work. So the 100,000 is, yes, that would be the contribution that the city is prepared to make, and it's a maximum amount.
Thank you. So I just want to be clear, because I've heard from other councillors saying that they should actually be paying for it if they want it, but they are actually paying for it as well. And so, and they're asking, I think, the city as well, because this would eventually be a city-owned facility, just similar to RMF and all these others. So they are contributing. I just want to make that clear.
Mr. Holden?
So through Mr. Chair, we haven't firmed up what the actual feasibility cost will be.
Yes.
This proposal is really looking at the city to take on a significant share of that cost, because at the end of the day, it is going to be a city-owned facility. But they are, I think, prepared to make a contribution, absolutely.
Okay. I'll just, I think, make a comment. I think we did also hire staff to do the rail renewal. I remember that we hired staff to look at that and to look at housing and do that whole thing on the rail lands. And so I guess the question is that do we not have those staff around anymore that would have access to all of that information around the rail lands through the chair?
Mr. Holden?
So through Mr. Chair, so the yards obviously is an approved neighborhood plan. That neighborhood plan does provide some flexibility for this type of a facility, or a arena complex or some type of an entertainment venue on that property. So the feasibility is more about the facility itself, what it would take to make it so that it can be feasible and that we can get a return on investment. Once you start to get into location, the work that we have through Mr. Lacey's team in terms of the condition of the land and the servicing to the land, we would have that information. But that is just one small component of the feasibility work. So the fact that we have staff that are focused on the development of the yards, if you remember, we still have a $33 million investment between the three orders of government to advance some development on that site, just in terms of preparation to move that to an attractive opportunity for investment by the private sector. It ties into some of the Dewdney enhancements and improvements that are coming up in the next couple of years.
Thank you. I know Ottawa has a really nice stadium with some condos around it that overlooks a nice arena. It's very beautiful. I want to ask, I guess there's the comment that I do think that this is worth considering. I think we've got private industry that's come forward that is asking us, will be contributing to this. And I think that, again, this is kind of the outside the box thinking. They've come to us to create opportunity and consider this. And I would agree with Councillor Shaw. There has been discussions. This would not just be a summer facility, it would be also a winter facility. And if it becomes a snowboard park in the winter, but it would be, could be surrounded by obviously boxes and stores which would animate and bring to life, and could even be condos and living around that area. It does need something, and no, I mean, it doesn't matter where it goes, but I do think that it does draw people. It builds, we talk about our recreation master plan. We know that there's I think, other work that needs to be done out at the Red Sox. So I would, I can't support Councillor Hawkins' suggestion, because I do think that this would, again, animate our city and bring it up to looking at different options for recreation, but not just baseball. I think it's another way to explore options for our city. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go next. Councillor Stevens, setting you up.
Great, thank you. A couple of comments and a question. I would argue that we've already done the exploratory study, and it's the rec master plan, and administration has provided us some guidance as to where this fits in that priority list. That was an expensive study, tons of engagement, and that gave us a priority list. I would also argue that the Red Sox have already done an exploratory study. They've provided us with possible locations. They've done their own analysis from an economic standpoint. So they've made the pitch. I think what they're really looking for is a buy-in. So to that point, $100,000 to this end isn't a lot of money, but it is symbolic. And if I'm going to spend it, I'm going to spend it all, and I'm going to go all the way with this project. And I think that's where my concern lies. If there wasn't going to be a very large ask of us, they'd be doing it themselves, right? And to Mr. Holden's point about the ROI, these stadiums don't have a return on investment. Otherwise, the private sector would be building them. They don't. There's a reason why rich people keep money in their pockets and spend the public's money on these big stadiums, is because there's no money in it. Unless you just have naming rights and you can actually derive profit from operations, but the building of it is shouldered by the public for a reason. So my question then is, kind of, let's say we do go ahead with this. And let's say the request is comparable to the stadium in terms of a percentage. And I'll apologize in advance, Barry, for putting you on the spot. If you don't have an answer to this, that's fine. Let's say the funding cost sharing is the same with this stadium. What roughly would that be in terms of the ask? And how would that align with the costs that we would be shouldered with for the aquatic center and for a potential new Brant center? The reason I ask that is eventually we're going to have to debt finance this. And I'm not convinced we actually have enough room in our debt financing limit to even afford the priority expenses. So Barry, if you could, or administration, what roughly would be the ask of us if it aligned with the cost sharing that we see with the stadium?
Mr. Lacey, is that to you?
Yeah, well, I'll start through you, Mr. Chair, and then if Mr. Holden has any comments to add, you can do so. I think it's a challenging question, because I think it's a hard, from an apples to apples comparison perspective. I think the feasibility would be the piece that would explore that piece. Initial indications, are that this type of facility would probably be in the $20, $22, $23 million range. The proponents have indicated there might be some money that they can contribute from their end, but really the feasibility study would really have to look, in addition to location and confirming those costs and, what kind of economic opportunity surrounding that stadium you might be able to generate, would look at those things, and then you'd have to look at your funding piece. And so, if you look at the stadium, we took out a lot of debt to do that. We got third-party funding from the government as well to support that piece. That debt, a lot of it's being paid off through a seat levy. And so a seat levy would be something that you'd probably look at with respect to this stadium as well to help finance or pay off any type of financing that's required with respect to the capital infrastructure build. I think it is a little bit different it is a little bit different from a scalability perspective. And, depending on how you can activate that site, will depend on how much you would get out of a seat levy too. So the feasibility study would really have to look at that. And, the feasibility study might also look at other innovative ways that you might try to finance something like that. I think it's fair to say we got a long list of capital projects. You guys have heard me talk about that before. And this would just go on this list if coming out of the feasibility study, council felt this was a priority, and we'd have to have that discussion then about priority and how we finance those priorities.
Thank you. And just to be clear, my final question, our priority list in terms of recreation amenities, the first is the Aquatic Center, which is between, 60 and 80 million, depending on the scope, higher?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we currently are actually doing a feasibility study with respect to the aquatics facility and hope to bring some update reports to council in the new year with a final report in the spring. But an indoor aquatics facility that's envisioned here, we're probably in the $100 to $130 million range with respect to that build.
And so I'm asking this question just because I'll just, if we approve this, we're gonna go all in for this new ball diamond. What's our debt limit, or what's our limit, and what can we actually afford? If we're just going to debt finance everything that's on our priority list, including this, how much money do we have?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now you're testing my memory here.
Sorry,
I know what the debt limit is. The debt limit's $450 million. And I think currently we're a little bit south of $350 million invested against that debt limit. So we have about $100 million, I think, or thereabouts around that piece. Now, you can always go to the province and ask to increase that debt limit. Once again, there's a whole bunch of analysis that would be required around that piece, because then you have principal and interest payments, which need to be funded somehow. And it impacts on, depending on what your priorities are as a council, where do you want to spend your money, on principal and interest or on other type of programming. And like I say, there are other innovative things that some municipalities have done, like incremental tax financing and pieces like that you could look at, but that would all require a study and analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before I give it back to Councillor Hawkins to close? See none. Okay, Councillor Hawkins, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. We have a priority list. It's been carefully thought out. I think we should stick to it. This is a professional baseball team. This is not about amateur sport. We can look to our recreation master plan to see the recommendations there for baseball diamonds for amateurs. This is still very, very highly speculative. There isn't enough here for us to invest $100,000 in it. And if there is something here that's worth an extra $100,000, I think the private sector will step up. We also have to keep in mind that in the end, if this were to go ahead, it's going to be $20 million plus. I worry that we get in for 100, and then we get in for another $1 million to do a more detailed feasibility study, and then there's another couple of million to do technical studies. We're going to be in so far that we can't get out. I don't see in the community the kind of backing or support at this stage that would cause us to make this investment right now. Again, if the private sector, if this sponsorship group can do a feasibility study, can come back with something more concrete, can suggest ways in which we might partner based on something that's real, then we can have that discussion. But right now, I think it's premature for us to be involved in any way. I'd ask you to support the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Okay. Deputy Clerk, could I ask you to call the question?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I will call the vote to deny the approval for the letter of intent between the City of Regina,
So if you are voting for this motion, that means you're in favor of the denial. If you vote against, it means that you're not in favor of the denial. So I will start with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
Opposed.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
Opposed.
Councillor Zakiniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
And Councillor Vinderga.
Opposed.
So that's 7 in favor and 3 against, so that carries.
Okay. We are done. So can I, resolution for private session? Councillor Stadnichuk. All in favor? Okay. Lunch is served. Yeah, lunch is served. So I will indulge with the council of the committee if we could take a 30-minute, next meeting is at 4 p.m. If we can take 30 minutes for lunch and then reconvene at 12:35, that's okay? Can I?
You could make that a 20-minute break,
Okay.
just to give the people who are in Regina Planning Commission a breather before they have to start work.
Okay. All in, yep, I see nod, so we'll reconvene. We'll be back at 12:30. Thank you very much.